Welcome to BuzzHouse, a Baker Tilly podcast where you can hear all the buzz around multifamily housing, with all the info you need to help you win now and anticipate tomorrow. Hi, I'm Don Bernards, the principal in charge of Baker Tilly's multifamily housing practice.
And I'm Garrick Gibson, a principal at Baker Tilly, also specializing in consulting on multifamily housing transactions across the country.
Let's get started. There always seems to be some combination of legislation and macroeconomic activities affecting the low-income housing tax credit equity market. One major impact to the low-income housing tax credit industry, of course, this summer was the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which Garrick and I covered on an earlier podcast. This act, of course, created a 12% increase in the 9% tax credit allocations per state, along with the impactful lowering of the 50% test for bond deals to 25%. It's very exciting to get these additional resources into our industry to help create the much-needed affordable housing, but it's looking like an unintended consequence may be lower tax credit pricing that we're all seeing in the industry. We're going to explore this and other current topics in the LIHTC equity industry with our guest today. We're very excited to have our guest today, Philip Porter. Many of you know, Senior Vice President, Head of Acquisitions for Housing Credit Investments at Enterprise. Again, Philip, thank you very much for joining us today. Glad to have you.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here today.
Very good. I'm going to turn over to Garrick to jump into our discussion with Philip. Garrick?
Thanks, Don, for that intro, and thanks, Philip, for being on BuzzHouse. But before we jump in with some questions for our listeners, would you please let us know a little bit about your professional background, along with your role at Enterprise and Enterprise itself? We know Enterprise has a number of roles throughout the industry, so maybe give us a little bit of background there.
Sure thing. So Enterprise is a 40-year-old intermediary in the community development field, and we actually cover a lot of different aspects of the affordable housing business. There are three pillars to Enterprise Community Partners. One of them is our policy and programmatic work, which we do across major cities throughout the country. And then another pillar is our residential division. We develop, operate, and provide services to 13,000 apartment homes from Pennsylvania down to Virginia. And then we also have our capital businesses, and our syndication business is our flagship. It's been a core part of who we are for a long time, but we also have our interest in Bellwether Enterprise, which is a permanent lending platform. We have real estate equity, which is a private equity funding source for preservation deals primarily. We have our CDFI, Enterprise Community Loan Fund, which provides pre-development and acquisition funding for deals, and then a new market tax credit practice as well. So we attempt to do all we can to support the field. Personally, I've been involved in multifamily housing since 1991. Started out in property management, worked with a state allocating agency, and then worked with a developer for a number of years before I came to Enterprise in 2001. And I've been syndicating ever since. Currently, it's a player-coach model where I originate some and worked with the acquisitions team as a whole to do the best we possibly can for Enterprise.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump into some questions now. So what we're seeing, Don and I are seeing, right, the discussion around the industry is all of these additional tax credits that are going to be coming to the market as a result of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. You got 12% more 9% credits, and the 50% test was reduced to 25% with the hopes of bringing more 4% projects to the market. With that, we're actually seeing some lower pricing in the market. So, Philip, what can developers be doing to help secure the strongest pricing they can?
That's a good question. I get asked that every day. So it really depends on the nature of the deal, the size of the equity check, and the location of the project to figure out how to optimize the outcomes. Right now, the matching process of deals with equity, which is what we do as syndicators, is slowed down. There's several reasons for that. Part one, many investors are ending their CRA cycles this year, and so they've already spent their budgets. Other investors are merging, and we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, in another part of this podcast. But many investors are seeing way more opportunities than they have the capacity to invest in. And so what I generally recommend for folks is to talk to the trusted syndicators and investors that they've worked with, figure out what the right way forward is for the deal, and then pick a partner to bring your deal to the investors rather than doing a cold bid where you send it out to 8 or 10 different syndicators hoping someone will have a different answer. Because right now, there's typically a plan A, hopefully a plan B, and rarely a plan C for placement. And it can be challenging to try to put the deal out through many different channels. It creates a lot of disturbance. But I would recommend that folks first place their equity and then place their debt, because so many investors who are going to pay the most for the opportunity are interested in construction and or permanent debt. And I think the main difference today versus just a couple of years ago is that many of the investors have permanent debt platforms that they're looking to grow, and that provides CRA credit, it provides current income, and it doesn't have the same balance sheet impact that construction debt does. So a lot of times that can be an incentive for an investor to bring equity to the deal.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Philip, to kind of set that up. Our next few questions, Philip, are around a lot of discussion. Hey, we need more demand. We need more investors in the market. And maybe we can talk a little bit about that in general. But my first question is going to be, there's interesting discussions around loosening up the passive activity rules. Probably when the program first came out, right? There are a lot of individuals investing maybe in tax credits. And I don't think it's happened for a long time, probably a couple decades. But your shoes as a syndicator, is that a good thing for the market? Do you think that could generate demand? And does a syndicator like you that's been in the business forever, are you going to pursue individual dollars if that's the case? Or do we see new syndicators in the market? How do you even approach this? Or are you even thinking about this yet?
Well, I do think that individual investors and any investor who could be added to this business would be a good thing. Individual retail type funds have a higher cost of administration. There's extra burdens around compliance and reporting that generally I would think would drive that capital to provide a floor for pricing, that probably that new money would be available to address the needs of the hardest to place deals that perhaps have the higher yields. But any money is good money for this industry right now. My hope would be that through technology and some of the new ways that folks are handling raising funds, that we could do it a little more efficiently than it was done before the Tax Reform Act of 1986. But the industry hasn't attended to this opportunity yet as a whole. So I think it'll take some time, if the rules change, for this money to be brought to bear for the benefit of the sponsors.
Very good. And Philip's kind of switching to my next question, kind of related about more demand. And again, Fannie and Freddie, kind of their potential caps to invest in LIHTC is up from $1 billion to $2 billion. Obviously, again, a good thing, as you noted, more equity in the market. Do you think that will stabilize things a little bit? A couple more $1 billion in the market? I know a lot of times they have duty to serve. What kind of projects, geographies? How do you kind of see that Fannie and Freddie maybe doubling? What's that do to the market in general and so forth?
Yeah, great question. So basically, that provides about another 100 deals worth of capacity, potentially, probably a little less than that. The issue is that with the 25% test, there will be more investment opportunities. In the short run, I anticipate markets where they've been bond limited, where a lot of deals have been able to get soft debt allocations and have just been waiting for the bonds so they could begin construction, many of those being new construction projects. There's going to be a surge in the short run of these large new construction projects getting bonds and hitting the market all at once. From some initial conversations with different state agencies and looking at some of the application lists and the scoring criteria for different jurisdictions, I think this new capital from the GSEs will be used up immediately. It will tend to go towards larger investments because their staffing may not expand as quickly as their budget. And so they'll be prone to working toward larger investments to meet their goals given their staffing capacity. And I think staffing capacity as a whole for the industry is an issue. At first, we're going to have a ton of these new construction deals. But over time, as soft debt is consumed and there's less new construction deals getting funded, there'll be more deals that are preservation projects moving forward. And then that will create a different challenge for both the state agencies, the syndicators, the debt teams, as well as the ultimate investors to handle the transaction volume for what may be about the same amount of equity.
Yeah, thanks. So touching on that, because obviously we've kind of talked about higher credit allocations, looser investor rules, and just wrapping all it up, we're also seeing things like the Federal Reserve cutting rates recently and possibly could see additional cuts. So I know you don't got a crystal ball or anything, but do you think we're headed fundamentally toward a different kind of LIHTC equity market structure for 2026? Or you think this is just kind of a short-term cycle that'll slowly settle back once construction costs start to normalize?
Well, I think short-term construction rates coming down will help balance budgets at closing. I think what's more important for the industry are the long-term rates, and those are less controlled by the Fed. Those are more about inflation and world markets. So the investor's return is compared typically to bonds, triple B bonds, but they're looking for a positive spread over 10-year treasuries. And if interest rates drop, then slowly the cost of capital as it's applied to equity investments will come down and increase pricing to deals. But unless long-term interest rates come down, I wouldn't expect material change in equity pricing. I think, though, the cost of funds is less of an issue right now than just the capacity of the system to absorb all the new deals coming through.
Got it. So then, in your opinion, what macro event would need to occur to swing that pendulum back to the higher credit pricing market?
Well, a few different things, but interest rates coming down, increased profitability for banks. So increased profitability for the institutions that are regularly investing, or through some change over time, increased tax rates would increase their tax capacity. I think those would be material. Otherwise, expanding the market by changing the way credits are delivered and opening it up to individual investors, those kinds of changes may over time increase the pricing overall.
Philip, one thing, like you said, increasing maybe bank capacity in one way or another, obviously higher profits, things like that. I know this kind of ties into my next question about advocacy. We all see kind of the Road to Housing Act that's out there right now that has a lot of provisions about cutting costs and so forth. But I know there's one provision in there, and I'm not a bank expert, but it allows some level of increase of 15 to 20% of some level to maybe allow increasing. Is there advocacy that you on the syndication side of enterprise or enterprise as a whole are kind of following, or that our listeners should be aware of? And I mentioned Road to Housing Act, that maybe that or other.
Sure. Let me speak broadly, and then I'll focus in on a couple specific items. Enterprise has a substantial public policy team. They work at the local, state, and national level, and they're advocating for both tax and fiscal policy to support the industry. A couple things that they're particularly focused on right now are the continuum of care, the funding that provides for homeless housing. It's rumored that that will be impacted by the current administration's policies, and so we're advocating hard to make sure everyone knows the value of that funding. And then there's other elements of the OBBB implementation that need work. So what I would recommend folks do is subscribe to the Capital Express newsletter, which is available on the Enterprise website, and participate and become a member of the Action Campaign, which focuses on LIHTC policy and is co-administered by NCSHA and Enterprise. I'd say those are the two main ways to plug into what we're up to on the policy front. But I think that the PWI, or public welfare investment limit, going potentially from 15 to 20%, that could help. But I think there's also then tax capacity issues. And if you're not using your credits currently, they're not very valuable. They don't generate the IRR that the model might suggest. Another element to the environment where we're in right now is that there's more deregulation. And you've seen that with 4 major mergers in the banking industry lately. And what happens there, I think it's a good thing long-term for the industry, because as institutions get larger, they tend to commit more capital to the low-income housing tax credit class. But in the short run, there's the kind of waiting period for the approvals, there's sorting out of the staffing, creating a community benefits plan, and then redetermining what their CRA needs are and budget for a given set of markets that they cover. So there can be a period of time where investment slows down for the banks that are merging while they wait for clarity for their business plan. And I think that, unfortunately, is happening right at the same time that the new credits are coming out.
Philip, I just actually have one other question that came to mind, and I think this question comes up a lot. It just seems like, I know all of us have been in the industry a long time, and there's always questions about underwriting. In the last 5 years with COVID and supply chain and interest rates and administration and now government shutdown, I think I know the answer before I ask it. Like, your underwriting is fundamentally the same. You have solid underwriting. Anything in today's world, environment, deals taking longer, federal funds, is there any underwriting that maybe is different today than it was 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago?
Well, I agree with you. Underwriting's been the same since I started with the syndication business in 2001. The level of detail has increased consistently over that period of time, and certain issues become hot topics that need extra discussion. But regarding tariffs right now and costs, we are stress testing deals to see. We found from our experience that roughly 30% of hard costs may be subject to tariffs. And so we apply a percentage tariff assumption and see what would happen if the costs went up. But what we found is that not many deals have been terribly surprised by tariffs. They haven't hit the market yet, and contractors have been budgeting or putting together contracts that account for the tariffs that they are facing. The BABA, or Build America, Buy America, that has been an issue for some folks logistically, schedule-wise, and cost. But overall, we haven't seen it really slow much down. So we do like to see contractors basically place half of their contracts or subcontracts, and within about 90 days from closing, buy out 60 or 70% of the total cost of the contract. And so we're asking a lot more questions, trying to understand the relationships contractors have with subs and their experience in that market, and make sure that they're handling the long lead items like elevators and electrical switchgear and equipment. Those kinds of things are considered early in the life of the deal. So overall, though, it's more, I think, a dynamic of the change in interest rates has been fairly sudden. The increase in operating expenses has hit a lot of folks hard at the same time that in some areas they've not been able to increase rents or collect all the rents that are scheduled. And so there have been a lot of perm conversions that have been challenged. And with the change in pricing, a lot of deals that were put together aren't balancing. So I think those issues dominate way more than the tariff-related costs right now.
Perfect. Well, that's it for this episode of the BuzzHouse, catching up with Philip Porter, Head of Acquisitions for Housing Credit Investments of Enterprise, discussing the current trends and topics within the low-income housing tax credit equity market. Once again, I'm Don Bernards.
And I'm Garrick Gibson.
Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. For additional resources around multifamily housing, check out bakertilly.com. If you have a suggestion for the show, email us at build@bakertilly.com. That's BUILD at bakertilly.com. See you next time on BuzzHouse.